Picture this. You're watching Casablanca, and Humphrey Bogart is staring down a room full of thugs with that legendary tough guy intensity. He looks absolutely commanding, right? Well, here's something that'll blow your mind. Bogart was actually standing on a hidden wooden box the entire time. And that's not even the craziest part. What fans never realized was that many of cinema's most commanding stars were actually shockingly short in real life. We're talking about actors who needed to stand on hidden boxes, walk through specially dug trenches, and use camera tricks just to appear average height. Today, we're exposing 12 Golden Age actors whose most impressive performance might have been convincing the world they were tall. From tough guys who couldn't reach their leading lady's shoulder to romantic heroes who needed stepladders for kissing scenes. These stars built their careers on one of Hollywood's most carefully guarded secrets. By the end of this video, you'll never watch classic films the same way again, because once you know the truth about how short these legends really were, you'll start noticing the tricks everywhere. The Golden Age studios didn't just occasionally make actors look taller. They built an entire industry around height illusion. Every single department was involved. Set designers constructed false floors and hidden platforms. Costume departments created special elevator shoes and suits with vertical tricks. Cinematographers developed specific camera angles that became known by the actor's name. Even casting became part of the lie. Studios would deliberately choose shorter actresses to make their male stars look bigger. They'd hire supporting actors based on height rather than talent. Press departments would inflate measurements in official biographies, sometimes adding 4 full inches to an actor's real height. This wasn't movie magic you'd see once or twice. This was an elaborate conspiracy involving hundreds of people, all working together to maintain the illusion that leading men were physically imposing. Let's start with the actor who literally had trenches dug for his co-stars. Alan Ladd's piercing blue eyes and tough guy intensity made him one of the most compelling stars of the 1940s. Films like This Gun for Hire and Shane turned him into a box office powerhouse. But the man who projected such dangerous authority on screen stood barely 5 feet 6 inches tall. Paramount Studios developed an entire arsenal of techniques specifically for Ladd. The most famous was pairing him with actress Veronica Lake, who at 4 feet 11 inches made Ladd look comparatively tall without any camera tricks needed. Their 7 films together weren't just about chemistry. It was strategic height management. But things got really extreme when Ladd had to work with taller actors. During the filming of Shane, director George Stevens actually had trenches dug into the ground for co-stars like Jack Palance to stand in during their scenes with Ladd. These became known as Ladd trenches, and they were standard practice on his sets. When trenches weren't enough, Ladd would stand on hidden platforms that crew members called Ladd boxes. His costume designers created suits with vertical pinstripes that visually lengthened his frame. Here's what makes Ladd's case really interesting, though. His height challenges might have actually created his distinctive acting style. That minimalist, tight-lipped approach he was famous for developed partly because bigger gestures would have disrupted the carefully arranged height illusions around him. But that wasn't even the most extreme case. James Cagney dominated Hollywood for decades with explosive performances in classics like The Public Enemy and White Heat. His tough guy image was so convincing that audiences assumed he must be physically imposing. The reality? Cagney stood just 5 feet 5 inches in real life. Unlike some shorter actors who were sensitive about their height, Cagney approached it with practical acceptance. "I don't care how tall I am," he once said. "I care about whether I can act." Warner Brothers frequently surrounded Cagney with actors of similar height in supporting roles. When taller actors were necessary, directors used clever blocking. They'd seat Cagney while others stood, or position him on staircases during confrontational scenes. But here's what really set Cagney apart. His dynamic physical performance style helped distract from height issues. That characteristic bouncing energy, those rapid movements, and explosive emotional outbursts created such a commanding presence that audiences rarely registered his actual size. Warner Brothers publicity materials consistently lied about Cagney's height, listing him at 5 feet 9 inches in official biographies. That's 4 full inches taller than reality. Edward G. Robinson created some of cinema's most terrifying characters, from the ruthless Rico in Little Caesar to his unforgettable roles in film noir classics. Robinson projected such dominating presence that people were shocked to learn he stood only 5 feet 5 inches tall. Robinson's height deception was different because directors completely reimagined how physical intimidation could work on screen. When playing gangsters, Robinson was often seated behind desks while others stood before him, creating a power dynamic that transcended physical height. In confrontational scenes, he would invade taller actors' personal space, creating tension that registered as pure intimidation. Robinson compensated for his height with extraordinary vocal projection. His distinctive speaking style created an auditory dominance that made his physical dimensions irrelevant. As director John Huston observed, Eddie didn't need to be tall. He had a voice that made him 10 feet high. Here's the fascinating part, though. Robinson's smaller stature may have actually enhanced his gangster portrayals. As critic Roger Ebert noted, here was a man who had to fight harder and be tougher just to survive in a world of larger men. That psychological complexity made his villains more compelling. Mickey Rooney holds the distinction of being one of the shortest major male stars in Hollywood history at just 5 feet 2 inches. Yet this tiny actor became MGM's biggest box office draw in the late 1930s and early 1940s, headlining the massively popular Andy Hardy series. Rooney's case is unique because MGM initially marketed his small stature as an asset. In the Andy Hardy films, his height was perfect for playing teenagers well into his 20s. The studio turned what could have been a limitation into a major advantage. The real challenge came when Rooney wanted more adult roles. MGM employed traditional height enhancement techniques, custom shoes with 3-inch lifts, raised platforms, and specialized camera angles. But here's what made Rooney special. As his career evolved, he began incorporating his height into performances rather than always hiding it. He'd use the height differential for comedic effect, particularly when paired with taller actresses. Throughout his 80-year career, Rooney maintained a philosophical attitude. "I'm not a tall man," he once said, "but I stand among giants in this business." But wait until you hear about the most famous height deception in Hollywood history. Humphrey Bogart's tough, world-weary persona made him one of cinema's most iconic leading men. But Warner Brothers publicity materials listing him at 5 feet 10 inches were complete lies. Bogart's actual height was closer to 5 feet 8 inches, with some sources suggesting he might have been as short as 5 feet 6. Once Bogart became a leading man, Warner Brothers implemented comprehensive height enhancement techniques. The most famous was the Bogey Box, a portable platform that Bogart would stand on when sharing scenes with taller co-stars. This was particularly evident in Casablanca. Ingrid Bergman, at 5 feet 9 inches, was actually taller than Bogart. Director Michael Curtis carefully blocked their scenes to hide this, frequently positioning Bogart on steps or having Bergman seated during their romantic moments. Here's the interesting part about Bogart. He seemed completely unconcerned about his height, focusing instead on developing the distinctive persona that would make him legendary. His characteristic hunched posture and head tilt actually helped disguise height differences when standing alongside taller actors. Bogart's minimalist approach to movement, staying relatively still, and letting his face and voice do the emotional work helped maintain those carefully crafted height illusions on set. Now let's rapid fire through some more shocking revelations. George Raft's cool, menacing presence defined gangster films while standing just 5 feet 7 inches. His characteristic stillness wasn't just acting, it was practical technique that maintained height illusions without disrupting them through movement. Sal Mineo's sensitive performances, particularly in Rebel Without a Cause, made him compelling despite being 5 feet 6 inches. His distinctive pompadour hairstyle added visual inches, a trick many shorter actors used. But nothing prepared me for learning about these entertainment giants. Sammy Davis Jr.'s extraordinary talents made him one of entertainment's most versatile performers. His dynamic stage presence created such commanding aura that fans were shocked to learn he stood only 5 feet 3 inches, one of the shortest major stars in Hollywood history. Davis's case is fascinating because his height limitations may have contributed to his legendary work ethic. As a performer facing both racial discrimination and height challenges, he developed extraordinary versatility that helped transcend both barriers. Davis consistently wore specially designed elevator shoes, adding 2 to 3 inches. His trademark high pompadour added additional visual height for his Rat Pack performances. With taller stars like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, the group cleverly incorporated choreography that minimized direct height comparisons. Their shows featured Davis in dynamic motion, while others remained stationary. Davis occasionally incorporated self-deprecating humor about his stature. During one Rat Pack performance, when Dean Martin made a height joke, Davis fired back, "I may be looking up at you physically, but musically, you're looking up at me." This confident approach reflected Davis's philosophy. Being a short, one-eyed black man in show business meant I had to be 10 times better than everyone else, so that's what I became, 10 times better. Speaking of Sinatra, his story might be the most surprising of all. Frank Sinatra's legendary status as the Voice made him one of the 20th century's most iconic entertainers. What many fans didn't realize was that the man who projected such commanding charisma stood only 5 feet 7 inches, possibly less. Sinatra's case is interesting because his fame as a singer created an image before most fans saw him in person. The power of his voice was so commanding that listeners naturally assumed he must be physically imposing. When Sinatra began serious acting, studios employed various enhancement techniques. He consistently wore custom elevator shoes, adding 2 to 3 inches. Directors used low camera angles and carefully managed scenes with taller actresses. What distinguished Sinatra from many shorter actors was his apparent comfort with his height off-screen. This confidence reinforced his authoritative image more effectively than artificial enhancements. This extended to his relationships with taller women, including his marriage to Mia Farrow, who at 5 feet 9 inches visibly towered over him in public appearances. Rather than seeming diminished, Sinatra's willingness to be seen with taller women reinforced his self-assured image. Dustin Hoffman emerged slightly later, but provides a fascinating bridge to modern height management. Standing 5 feet 6 inches, Hoffman approached height challenges with new era sensibility. What makes Hoffman's case particularly interesting is how his height often became implicit, part of his character's underdog status. In films like Midnight Cowboy and Kramer vs. Kramer, his smaller stature subtly reinforced his characters as men fighting against larger systems. Rather than viewing height as a limitation to completely hide, Hoffman and his directors often incorporated it as a character element. Hoffman has addressed his height with candor. "I think I was lucky being short. It forced me to develop other qualities. I was never going to be the conventional leading man, so I had to find my own path." This self-awareness represents significant evolution from the Golden Age approach. Burgess Meredith created larger-than-life characters while standing only 5 feet 5 inches. From Mickey in Rocky to the Penguin in Batman, he made physical dimensions irrelevant through extraordinary vocal power. What made Meredith special was how his distinctive voice, resonant, precise, capable of remarkable projection, created auditory dominance that made height meaningless. But here's an entertainer who turned his height into pure advantage through sheer energy. Danny Kaye's extraordinary physical comedy made him beloved in the 1940s and 1950s. At 5 feet 7 inches, his height deception benefited from his comedic persona. His performances were so kinetic, constantly moving, dancing, gesturing, that audiences never had time to register height comparisons. Unlike dramatic actors who required elaborate techniques to appear more imposing, Kaye's height worked for him. His compact frame and perfect coordination allowed him to execute complex physical comedy and dance routines with precision that taller, less agile actors couldn't match. During the filming of White Christmas, where he appeared alongside the 6'3" Bing Crosby, Kaye reportedly quipped to the crew, "Between the two of us, we average out to a perfect height. Bing's got the surplus and I've got the shortage." Now here's what's really fascinating about all these stories. What emerges most clearly is how the perception of height was considered essential for male stars in ways that didn't apply to actresses. Hollywood imposed countless physical requirements on female performers, but women were actually expected to be shorter than their male co-stars, creating a double standard that reinforced conventional gender dynamics. Perhaps most revealing is how many shorter actors developed distinctive performance styles that compensated for modest stature. Cagney's explosive energy, Bogart's minimalist intensity, Robinson's psychological intimidation. These weren't just artistic choices, but practical solutions to physical limitations that became defining elements of their screen personas. The legacy of these height deceptions offers fascinating insights into Hollywood's complex relationship with physical reality. In an industry built on illusion, Star height management represents perhaps the most comprehensive and sustained deception. What's particularly striking is how successfully these techniques concealed truth from audiences for decades. The careful lighting, strategic camera angles, and meticulous height management created convincing fantasy that allowed viewers to focus on performances rather than physical realities. The most valuable insight from these stories is recognizing how arbitrary many of Hollywood's physical standards have been throughout history. These 12 actors, all of whom overcame height limitations to create legendary careers, demonstrate that authentic talent and screen presence ultimately matter far more than physical dimensions. As James Cagney once observed, it's not how tall you stand, it's how tall you stand in people's hearts. For these diminutive giants of the silver screen, their cultural stature has far outlasted any temporary illusions created by Apple boxes and camera angles, proving that true star power transcends physical measurements. And there you have it, 12 legendary Hollywood stars who commanded screens with larger-than-life personas while standing on hidden boxes, platforms, and trenches. From Humphrey Bogart's subtle intensity to James Cagney's explosive energy, these actors created unforgettable performances that transcended their modest physical dimensions. What makes these stories so fascinating isn't just the technical trickery involved, but how these actors developed unique performance styles that turned potential limitations into distinctive strengths. Which of these stars surprised you the most? Had you ever noticed hints of these height deceptions in your favorite classic films? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deeper look at Hollywood's hidden history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos revealing the secrets behind classic cinema. Only 0.4% of people watching are subscribed, and you've stayed this long. Let's fix that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next deep dive into Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets.